Ethan woke to a world far different from any he had known. The air was crisp and filled with unfamiliar scents, metallic, floral, and something wild, untamed. He stepped outside the dwelling Zira had chosen for him. The structure itself was enormous, with walls that shimmered like liquid metal, and windows high above that revealed vast cities and towering landscapes. Ethan felt small, but there was a strange exhilaration in being surrounded by life so unlike his own. Zira stood beside him, her massive form calm and imposing. "Your training begins today," she said. "You will learn to survive here not as a guest but as a partner. My people will test you. Their world is harsh and only those who adapt endure." Ethan nodded. He knew that saying "I can do it" was not enough. Survival here would demand more than courage. It would demand intelligence, strength, and cunning. Their first task was simple in appearance but difficult in execution. Zira led him to a vast arena, enclosed by towers from which her people observed. Ethan realized quickly that these observers were not mere spectators. They were evaluating every movement, every decision, every instinct. Zira explained that the arena simulated extreme conditions, from sudden blizzards to unexpected predators, testing both physical and mental abilities. The moment the trial began, Ethan understood the challenge. Massive creatures, stronger than anything on Earth, charged at him from different directions. The terrain shifted without warning. Slopes became cliffs, ice turned to slick mud. Ethan fell more than once, scraping his arms and knees, but he remembered Zira's words. Endurance, courage, intelligence. Survival here required all three. He improvised, using his knowledge of physics to create makeshift barriers and traps, leveraging momentum to escape tight spots. Zira watched silently from above, occasionally offering guidance. "Think, human. Strength alone will not save you. Use your mind." Ethan realized the truth of her statement. While he could not match her or her people in raw power, he could outthink them. By observing patterns, predicting creature behavior, and improvising tools from his environment, he survived where others might have failed. By the end of the day, bruised, exhausted, but still standing, he had earned his first measure of respect. Days passed, each one more challenging than the last. Ethan learned to climb enormous structures, swim in freezing rivers teeming with unknown predators, and hunt creatures far larger and faster than any human animal. He also learned their customs, how to communicate with subtle gestures, how to show respect without bowing to weakness, how to negotiate with intelligence as well as physical prowess. Despite the grueling training, Ethan's bond with Zira deepened. She shared stories of her people, their history, struggles, and traditions. She spoke of loss, of the death of her mate, and of the responsibility she bore to continue her lineage. In turn, Ethan shared tales of humanity, our creativity, adaptability, and resilience. Slowly, mutual respect grew into trust, and trust began to shape something stronger. Understanding. Yet challenges were not only physical. Some leaders in Zira's society viewed Ethan as an intruder, a weak human unfit to influence the future of their species. Rival factions challenged him openly, testing him in duels designed to humiliate or eliminate him. At first, Ethan struggled. He was outmatched in size and strength, and the fear of failure gnawed at him. But he remembered the ice planet, remembered survival against impossible odds, and he fought back, not with sheer power but with strategy. In one duel, a giant warrior attacked him with blinding speed. Ethan dodged, using the arena's terrain to his advantage. He lured the warrior toward a series of traps improvisated from scattered debris. With careful timing, the warrior was ensnared, defeated without lethal injury. The crowd gasped, and even the doubters began to murmur. Ethan realized then that he could survive here, not by becoming their equal in strength, but by becoming something more unpredictable, adaptable human. Zira watched the duel from above, her expression unreadable. When Ethan returned to her side, bruised but victorious, she said simply, "You are beginning to understand. That is all I ask." But peace was fleeting. One evening, while Ethan rested after a grueling day, scouts brought news of an approaching force, an alien faction seeking to claim Zira's people and discredit Ethan's presence. The rival leaders believed that a human could not lead, could not survive, and would be a liability. Their attack was swift, designed to destabilize and intimidate. Ethan felt a surge of fear but also determination. He could not fail. Not for himself, not for Zira, not for the future of her species. He moved quickly, coordinating defenses with surprising skill. Using knowledge he had gleaned during training, he devised strategies that leveraged the environment, trapped invaders, and minimized casualties. Zyra fought beside him, her immense strength a shield and a sword. Yet it was Ethan's human ingenuity. The traps, the diversions, the calculated risks that turned the tide. By sunrise, the invaders were routed. Zyra's people celebrated, and even the skeptical leaders approached Ethan with cautious respect. He had survived not only the physical trials of the arena, but the real threats of politics and war. He had proven that humans, though smaller and seemingly fragile, could influence the fate of worlds with courage and intelligence. After the battle, Zyra approached him. "You have exceeded expectations," she said. "Not in strength, but in spirit. That is the measure of true survival." Ethan, exhausted and sore, smiled faintly. "I only did what I had to do." "No," Zyra corrected gently. "You did more than survive. You adapted, you learned, and you led. That is rare even among my kind." As days turned to weeks, Ethan continued to train and integrate into Zyra's society. He learned their language fully, mastered advanced combat techniques, and participated in council meetings, offering ideas that surprised even seasoned leaders. He was no longer just a human guest. He was a respected member of her world, a partner in her vision for the future. During quiet moments, Ethan and Zyra spoke of the future, the children they might have, the blending of human resilience with alien strength. Ethan realized that the purpose Zyra had first offered him, the chance to survive, had transformed into something more profound. He was not only surviving, he was shaping the destiny of a species, bridging worlds and proving that humanity could thrive even among giants. The bond between them strengthened, built on trust, respect, and shared trials. Ethan understood Zyra's loneliness, her grief, and her hope. He saw in her eyes the weight of responsibility and the quiet desire for connection. He in turn showed her that humans could be brave, clever, and compassionate, even when facing beings far stronger than themselves. Months passed, and Ethan became more than a partner. He became a symbol. The union of human and alien represented the merging of worlds, the potential for cooperation, and the triumph of ingenuity over pure might. Zyra's people began to see that survival was not only about size or strength. It was about heart, mind, and courage. One evening, as they stood together overlooking the vast city below, Zyra spoke softly. "You have done more than I imagined, Ethan. My people will thrive because of your courage, your intelligence, and your humanity. You are worthy, not only as a husband, but as a partner in the truest sense." Ethan looked at her, feeling a sense of pride and humility. "I only did what I could," he said. "I had a reason to try, and I had someone who believed in me." Zyra smiled, her massive form silhouetted against the twin moons rising over the horizon. "That is why you succeeded. Strength alone would not have been enough. You have heart, human, and heart can change the fate of worlds." The story closed not with an ending, but with a beginning. Ethan had arrived as a struggling human, unsure of his worth, facing impossible odds. Now he stood as a hero, a partner, and a living bridge between species. He knew challenges would continue: political intrigue, threats from rival factions, and the responsibilities of raising offspring capable of inheriting both human and alien strength. But for the first time in his life, Ethan felt ready. He had survived frozen wastelands, alien trials, and battles of both strength and wit. He had earned his place not just beside Zyra, but in the history of her people. Together, they would face the future, a testament to courage, ingenuity, and the triumph of humanity in a universe that often underestimated it. And as the stars glimmered above their alien world, Ethan realized something profound. Survival was not just about living. It was about rising, adapting, and leaving a legacy. In Zyra's eyes, he saw the reflection of all that he had achieved and all that he would become. The human had not only survived among giants, he had thrived, proving that even the smallest spark of humanity could ignite change on a cosmic scale. The mountains of Clyra Prime were unforgiving. Sharp cliffs rose like jagged teeth, and the wind howled as if warning intruders to turn back. Snow fell in thick layers, covering every crevice and making the already treacherous paths nearly invisible. Kale, a young human boy with dark, tousled hair and eyes that had seen too much, climbed steadily, his small frame moving with a strength that surprised anyone who saw him. He had grown up alone in these mountains, orphaned when he was very young after an alien raid had destroyed his settlement. From that day on, survival had been his only teacher, and it had made him clever, cautious, and unusually brave for a boy of his age. Kyle paused on a narrow ledge to catch his breath. He looked out over the frozen valleys below, the wind biting at his cheeks. It was a lonely place, and he had long since gotten used to the emptiness. But even in this harsh solitude, he had learned to find small joys: the crisp taste of snow, the warmth of a fire he built himself, the sound of the wind singing through the mountain peaks. Life was hard, yes, but it was his life, and he had learned to master it. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks, Kale spotted something unusual, a faint glow moving through the snow below. At first, he thought it might be some strange mountain creature, but as he focused, he realized it was a figure, small and struggling. He quickly descended the slope, careful not to slip on the ice until he reached the source of the light. There, huddled against a rock, was a girl. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, covered in markings that seemed to pulse softly, almost like the beat of a heart. She was thin, exhausted, and clearly terrified, her eyes wide as she tried to push herself up. Kale's instincts kicked in immediately. He crouched in front of her, careful not to startle her. "Hey, you okay?" he asked gently. His voice was calm but firm. The girl flinched at the sound of his voice, but she didn't run. Instead, she shook her head slightly, trying to speak. Her words came in broken fragments, a strange language Kale didn't understand, but the tone, the urgency was clear enough. She needed help. Kyle glanced around. There were no signs of other beings, but the girl's fear was palpable. Whoever she was running from, they were fast and they were dangerous. He made a quick decision. "Come on," he said. "You can't stay here. I'll help you." The girl hesitated, uncertainty in her glowing eyes. Then, as if deciding he was trustworthy, she nodded slightly. Kale helped her to her feet. She stumbled, her legs weak from exhaustion, and Kale supported her under the arms. "Can you walk?" he asked. She tried, then winced in pain. He could see bruises forming on her arms and legs, and her clothes were torn. Without thinking, he lifted her slightly, and together they began climbing higher into the mountains, taking hidden paths he knew well. As they moved, Kyle kept glancing at her. "What happened to you?" he asked softly. The girl didn't answer directly, but she pointed over her shoulder, toward the distant peaks. Kale understood she was running, fleeing something. But what and why? The night grew colder and snow began to fall harder. Kale built a small shelter using rocks and branches, then helped the girl inside. He started a fire, carefully shielding it from the wind. The warmth was small, but it brought color back to her pale face. She looked at him then, and for the first time he saw relief in her eyes. "My name is Kale," he said. "What's yours?" The girl hesitated. Then slowly she whispered, "Lyra." "Lyra," Kyle repeated. The name felt soft, delicate like her. "We'll keep you safe tonight. Tomorrow we move further. You can rest now." Lyra nodded and curled up near the fire. Kale kept watch, his eyes scanning the dark mountain paths for any sign of danger. He knew these mountains were full of predators, both animal and alien. His own experience had taught him to never let his guard down, and now, with Lyra depending on him, his vigilance became sharper than ever. Hours passed. The wind moaned and snow piled around their small shelter. Kale's mind drifted briefly to memories of his parents, lost to raiders who had destroyed his home. He had survived by hiding, running, and fighting when he had no choice. Now here he was again, facing another threat, but this time he had someone to protect. The thought gave him both fear and determination. Lyra stirred. She looked at him with glowing eyes. "They coming?" she asked in broken words. Kale understood immediately. She was asking if the people she was fleeing had found her. "Not yet," he said, "but we'll be ready. You just rest. I'll handle anything that comes." She nodded and leaned slightly against him, trusting him despite the strangeness of it all. Kyle's heart tightened. He wasn't used to having anyone rely on him. The mountains had been his only companion, and now there was a life, fragile, scared, and glowing with strange light, depending on his strength. By dawn, Kale had mapped a safer route through the mountains. It was longer, but it avoided the steep cliffs where predators could ambush them and the open passes where they could be spotted from far away. He helped Lyra up and they began their journey again. carefully navigating the treacherous terrain. As they moved, Kale noticed small things: Lyra's ability to sense danger, the way her markings pulsed when something was near. She didn't speak much, but her gestures and eyes conveyed everything they needed. She led him to a narrow ridge where he nearly slipped, and then back to a hidden grove where wild herbs grew. He realized quickly that she was not entirely helpless. She had skills, instincts, and abilities that complemented his own. That afternoon, they reached a steep cliff. The path ahead was blocked by a falling rock slide. Kale examined it carefully. He could see no safe way down. Lyra looked at him, eyes wide with fear. Kale took a deep breath, remembering every trick his parents had taught him, every lesson the mountains had imposed on him. With careful steps, he guided Lyra across the precarious rocks, helping her balance, holding her close when the ground shifted beneath them. When they finally reached solid ground again, Lyra exhaled, a quiet, relieved sound. Kale smiled faintly. "See? Nothing we can't handle," he said, though inside he knew this was just the beginning. Night fell again, colder than before. They made camp in a small cave tucked into the side of the mountain. Kale gathered firewood, starting a small fire while Lyra settled nearby. She seemed to relax a little, the tension in her shoulders easing as she watched him work. Kyle wanted to know more about her, who she was, why she was being hunted, but he knew pressing her could make her fearful. Instead, he offered her small comforts, some roasted root vegetables he had carried, a blanket made from his own worn cloak. Slowly, she accepted, nibbling at the food, watching the firelight dance across his face. "My parents," Kale began quietly, not sure why he was sharing. "They were taken by raiders like yours, I think. I survived because I learned to be fast and quiet. You will survive too, I promise." Lyra looked at him, eyes reflecting both fear and gratitude. She didn't speak, but the small nod she gave him was enough. Kyle felt a strange warmth, a connection he had never had before. This was not just survival now. This was responsibility, loyalty, and trust. Hours passed in silence. The wind outside howled, snow beating against the cave entrance. Kyle kept watch, scanning the mountains for any sign of movement. He thought about what the next day would bring. He knew they couldn't stay here forever. Lyra needed to reach safety, and he would guide her there no matter the cost. Finally, exhaustion overcame him. He curled near the fire, keeping one eye open, alert for any danger. Lyra leaned slightly against him, sleeping with the trust of someone who knew he would protect her. Kale closed his eyes, thinking of the mountains he had known all his life, the dangers he had faced, and the challenge ahead. He felt a mixture of fear and determination, but above all, a quiet resolve he would not fail, and so, under the cold, unforgiving sky of Clyra Prime, an orphan boy and a fleeing alien girl rested together, their bond forged by necessity, courage, and trust. They did not know that the next day would bring even greater danger. A band of 30 alien raiders hunting them across the mountains, threatening everything they had struggled to survive. But for tonight, in the quiet warmth of the fire and the shelter of the cave, Kale and Lyra found a fragile moment of peace, a moment that would steel them for the trials to come.